Do you have a sweet tooth that's making life difficult for you? Hey guys, it's Dr. Bodle, and it's not uncommon to hear people say, I wish I could be more consistent with my nutrition, but I have this dang sweet tooth that keeps messing things up. So is having a sweet tooth actually a real thing? And is your sweet tooth causing you to think about food all the time, leading to an increase in cravings, and making it difficult for you to make healthy choices? Well, the answer might surprise you, and that's what we're going to cover in today's video. And remember guys, I couldn't do this without you, so if you've been liking the content and want to continue to learn about natural strategies to support your Hashimoto's and hypothyroid symptoms, please remember to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment if you have any questions, and click on the bell for new video notifications every Thursday morning. So to get started today, we're going to begin by answering that big question, which is, do you have a sweet tooth? And the answer is yes, but to some degree, so does every other human on the planet. Now, of course, just like anything else, there is going to be some amount of individual variability. However, I think a lot of us see certain people who can have a bite of a cookie and then set it down and forget about it and think, wow, that person is incredible, or they must have just amazing amounts of self-control. In reality, I think it's less about willpower and more about the health status of that person. But we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But why do I say that all people have a sweet tooth? Well, the reason is because that human beings as a species have a very strong capacity for both adaptability and survivability. And one of the reasons that we're good at those things is because our bodies are primed for acquiring calories and also storing those calories away. Why is this? Well, if you look at things historically, calories are tough to come by. And if you don't believe me, walk into any natural environment, look around and say, okay, where am I going to get my daily minimum calorie requirement that's going to allow me to survive? In those scenarios, food isn't always plentiful or available, and it can take some significant effort to extract the calories that we need. That said, what if you got lucky? What if you came across a food source that not only was easily digestible and provided you with a lot of quick energy for your cells, but could also, in a relatively easy manner, be converted into stored form of calories, whether that's glycogen or fat. Therefore, when you find yourself without a source of calories, you can pull on those stored forms of energy and have it help you to get through leaner times. Well, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present sugar, a potent form of energy that is not only available for our cells to use now, but is also easily stored for later. And because sugar checks multiple boxes when it comes to survivability, if we look at things through an evolutionary lens, it would make sense that our brain and our physiology would be primed to acquire sugar whenever possible. The thing is, our ability to access sugar has always been limited by our environment. So even though that sweet tooth was always present, always a part of our physiology, it wasn't something that we could necessarily act on because of the constraints of our environment. In fact, there's been some documentation of modern day hunter-gatherer people that when they come across a beehive filled with honey, they will eat that honey until they're sick. It's reports like this that makes me feel a little bit better about myself. And it shows us that although these people are likely in better health, they're leaner, they're more athletic, they still have that inherent drive to eat sugar and oftentimes eat sugar to excess. But as we see, their willpower isn't any different from ours. They have a sweet tooth just like us. The difference is the environment, the availability, and their access to these things. But now let's flip things around and tell the second half of the story, which is that you don't have a sweet tooth, at least not like you think you do. Remember when I brought up those people that we're all a little jealous of? The people who can easily moderate their food intake and don't seem to have any problems around sweet treats or desserts? Again, I admit that they might be wired a little bit different than the rest of us. And whatever that wiring is, I wish I could bottle it up and give it to everyone, but I'll let you know when that happens. However, I really believe that it has less to do with their willpower and much more to do with their overall health status. Yes, it's very likely that we all have an internal sweet tooth, at least to some degree. But as you're probably aware, the intensity of that sweet tooth can vary. And if that's the case, we should ask ourselves, what is causing the intensity of that sweet tooth to turn up in certain situations and in other situations turn down? Why is sugar so important to our brain? Well, not because it's sugar, but because of what it represents. It represents our ability to generate energy for our body, both in the present and in the future. And when it comes to Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, we know that a decrease in thyroid function also leads to a decrease in function of all hormones in the body and their associated receptors. One of the big players in our metabolism that we've talked about before is the hormone insulin. Insulin is released by our pancreas, and one of its jobs is to help facilitate the transport of fuel from our bloodstream into our cells. Once it's in our cells, it can either be utilized for energy or it can be stored away for later. In doing so, insulin not only helps us with our energy production, but it also helps to protect our body from the toxic effects of too much fuel, either excess glucose or excess triglycerides, staying in our bloodstream and potentially causing damage and inflammation. But what if, because of our thyroid problems, insulin now has a more difficult time signaling and transporting fuel into our cells? Well, we don't really need to ask ourselves, what if? This is exactly what happens. And it's very common for people with thyroid issues to develop some degree of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is what we call it when insulin isn't talking efficiently to our cells, and therefore we can start to see a decrease in fuel levels in the intracellular environment, meaning within the cell, and that can compromise our body's ability to make energy. When this happens, our brain starts to freak out, because if our cells can't make energy, then they're more likely to lose function. So what does the brain do in these types of situations? Well, it knows that these cells are low on fuel, so it is going to drive aspects of our physiology to remedy that problem. And this is going to include a significant increase in many of our hunger cues. But if we're hungry and we're trying to fix a problem with low fuel right now, what's the best way to do it? We don't want something that's going to be slow. We already mentioned that our brain is in a panic. We want something that's going to fix that problem as fast as possible. Thankfully, or not thankfully, our old friend sugar is here to save the day. And because of thousands of years of physiological and genetic learning, our brain knows that sugar is going to be the fastest way to fix that problem and much more efficient than having something that is high in protein or high in fat. To make matters worse, if you couple thyroid issues and insulin resistance with other things that can affect blood sugar regulation and insulin function, whether it's exercising too much, having high levels of stress in your life, or not getting enough sleep, then not only are you compounding the problem, but you're also creating an environment where you're going to have a very intense sweet tooth. You'll be looking for a sugar fix all the time, and even when you do get some sugar, it doesn't seem to fix your cravings. The good news is that these things can get better. And just like we talked about your sweet tooth varying depending on the day, we can use certain strategies intentionally to help manage that sweet tooth and allow you to be more successful and more consistent. Even though your brain wants you to have sugar in an effort to maintain energy levels within the cells, the best thing you can do in these situations is to remove sugar from your diet. And for my patients, this includes all of the processed sugars and also certain natural forms of sugar that tend to be highly concentrated. This includes things like honey, maple syrup, and fruit juices. And although some people feel like some of the natural sweeteners can be a good bridge from a high sugar diet to a low sugar diet, if those sugar cravings are really intense, then you may want to consider avoiding anything that is significantly sweet, at least for a period of time. As you're making these changes, if they're tolerated, use fruits and vegetables as your source of carbohydrates and eat them in their whole food form. Have consistent meal timing throughout the day and don't skip meals. One thing that is sure to make our sweet tooth worse is to get too far behind when it comes to getting fuel. If we start to get significantly hungry and irritable, that'll drive those cravings up, and it's really a tough spot to come back from. Do yourself a favor and be proactive when it comes to eating consistently. When you are choosing meals, make sure to get a good mix of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And you know what I'm going to emphasize for you? Make sure you're getting enough protein. Protein won't fix a craving once it starts, but it can help to prevent them from ever happening. Lastly, limit your use of stimulants like caffeine, nicotine, and energy drinks, as these can also cause fuel fluctuations, which might make you feel better in the short term, but probably won't help you to make those long-term changes. Obviously, getting off our sugar dependency can be extremely hard to do, but if we can make some of these changes, reduce our cravings, turn that sweet tooth intensity down, then I know not only will you feel more in control of your choices and your health, but it will also support better thyroid function and better function of your system as a whole. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have you struggled with sugar cravings throughout your life? And if you've made progress, what sort of changes seem to help you the most? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and continuing the conversation. If you like this video but need more help and guidance and are interested in working with me one-on-one, either in person or virtually, then remember you can always start that process by sending an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com and putting in the subject line consultation. Once we hear from you, my staff will reach out, ask you a few questions, and make sure that you qualify for the free consultation. Once that's complete, they'll be able to schedule a time for you and I to sit down, go over your health concerns, talk about your goals, and see if this is something that I can help you with. As always, it's absolutely no pressure, and if we feel like things are a good fit together, then we can take the next steps from there. If you're not ready for a consultation, but you want to keep learning, then I'd recommend checking out some of the other videos and playlists on the channel. And if you like today's video, I have a playlist that focuses on Hashimoto's and nutrition. Also, feel free to grab either one of my free downloads that are linked in the description box, or you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook, where I post daily information, strategies, and tips. That's it for this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and reach out if you have any questions. My name is Dr. Bodle. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.